The store is a smoking crater, and hypothermia is already carving your name into the frost. The bombs fell, the cities went quiet. The air tastes like burned plastic and regret. Your apartment is gone. Your car is slag. Your survival kit? You never bought one because you thought the government would save you. Spoiler, they didn't. Now it's you, the wilderness, and a 40% chance of freezing before sunrise. No hammer, no nails, no tutorials, because the grid is dead and your phone is just a rectangle of glass. But here's the good part. You don't need tools. You need physics, spite, and the ability to sleep in dirt like your ancestors did before IKEA ruined them. Time to build a shelter with your hands and maybe a rock. First rule, location decides whether you live. Second rule, everywhere's awful, so choose the least lethal option. You're looking for three things: cover, drainage, and an absence of corpses. Avoid the obvious. That gas station is occupied by someone with a shotgun and trust issues. That FEMA shelter is now a crater shaped like broken promises. That cozy cabin in the woods is haunted, or worse, already owned by someone who understands traps. Find high ground. Not too high, or the wind will skin you like a potato. Not too low, or you'll wake up floating in radioactive runoff. Look for windbreaks, cliffs, dense trees, rock walls. Extra credit if there's a cave. Caves are nature's bunkers. Just check for bears. Or don't. Maybe you need the protein. Drainage matters because water flows downhill, and so does your luck. Sleep in a valley, wake up in a stream. Sleep on a slope, wake up dry or dead from a slide. Avoid riverbeds, they flood. Avoid clearings, they funnel wind. Avoid places that look perfect. If it looks safe, someone already claimed it and they're not sharing. You need materials. Lucky you, the apocalypse is a hardware store with no cashier. Grab fallen branches, dead trees, bark, leaves, vines, mud, rocks, anything the forest will give you. No saws? Use your hands. No rope? Make it. No dignity? That disappeared when you started eating cold beans from a can. Start with the frame. Long, sturdy branches, wrist thick, arm length, flexible enough to bend without snapping. You're building a skeleton. Think ribs. Lean them against a tree, a rock, or each other in an A-frame. This is your roof, your walls, your only barrier between you and the void. Angle it around 45 degrees, steep enough to shed rain and snow, shallow enough that you're not building a wind sail that launches you into next week. If it collapses, you try again. If it holds, you might see morning. Next comes insulation. Gather everything soft, dry, and flammable. Leaves, pine needles, moss, grass, bark strips. Pile it thick, thicker. You want at least 6 inches of dead plant matter between you and the cold. Why? Because air is terrible at moving heat, and trapped air is your only blanket. Dead leaves have an R value around 2 per inch, and it's better than some store-bought insulation, and it's free if you ignore the whole collapse of civilization thing. No sleeping bag, no fleece, just decomposition and desperation. Weave smaller branches horizontally through the frame. This is your lattice. A skeleton needs skin. Layer leaves and moss over it and pack it tight. If light gets through, wind gets through. And wind is a patient killer. It doesn't stab you, it waits. Now, weatherproofing. Your shelter is up, but don't relax. It's a glorified compost pile about 4 hours away from failure in the first rain. Find mud, real mud, wet, heavy, clay-rich. Mix it with dry grass or pine needles until it becomes primitive mortar. Smear it over the outside. This isn't dirt, it's armor. It hardens in the sun and sheds water like a drunk sheds responsibility. The grass is your rebar. It keeps the mud from cracking as it dries, because even dirt needs integrity when the world has none. No mud? Use bark. Peel large sheets from dead trees. Birch bark is a gift. It's naturally waterproof because of its oils. Native Americans built canoes from it. You're using it because Home Depot is now a parking lot full of skeletons. Overlap the sheets like shingles, bottom to top. Water moves down. Physics doesn't care about your feelings. Do it wrong and you build a funnel to drown yourself. Test it. Pour water. If it beads and rolls, you're safe. If it soaks through, you're sleeping in a wet coffin. Seal every gap. Each crack is a highway for wind and regret. Stuff them with moss, mud, leaves. A 1-inch gap can drop the inside temperature 10 degrees. That's the difference between sleep and death. Now the floor, because the ground is lava, thermally speaking. The earth is cold, wet, and it steals heat faster than a bad relationship. Conductive heat loss takes most of your body heat when you're lying down. You can have the best roof on earth and still freeze from below. Pile leaves, pine needles, dry grass, and small sticks until the floor is at least 8 inches deep. This is your mattress and your defense. The ground is 50 degrees, your body is 98. Physics says you lose. This says, maybe not tonight. Pine needles are elite. They trap air and don't compress flat. Layer it like a lasagna. Sticks for airflow, then grass, then leaves, then pine needles on top. Even comfort requires engineering when survival is the goal. Replace it every few days. Your breath turns insulation into a damp sponge. Find flat rocks and you win the lottery. Stack them in the sun. At night, they radiate heat back to you. You just built a thermal battery out of garbage and anger. Rocks hold heat. It's called thermal mass. Same reason pizza ovens work, and you don't become a frozen statue. Wrap them before touching them. Direct contact burns skin. Explaining burns and frostbite later makes you look incompetent, assuming you live long enough to care. Ventilation matters. Shelters kill people with carbon dioxide. You inhale oxygen and exhale poison. In a sealed space, you pass out before you realize you're dying. CO2 sinks and pools at the bottom like invisible quicksand. Leave a small gap near the top. Hot air rises, cold air falls. Convection is free if you let it work. Fire inside is a bad idea unless you want to be smoked. Carbon monoxide is odorless and lethal. Keep fire outside. Test airflow. If you feel dizzy, you're losing. A candle tells the truth. If the flame flickers toward the exit, you live. If it dies, you follow. Fire is your last friend. Build it outside, close enough to feel, far enough to survive. Dry wood snaps, wet wood bends. Start small, twigs, leaves, bark shavings. Fat wood burns even when wet because physics sometimes shows mercy. No lighter, friction. Stick, board, notch, spin. Heat becomes ember. Ember becomes fire. Or it doesn't and you freeze. You need 800 degrees. Your hands and rage can do it, but start before your fingers die. Feed the fire. Build a reflector wall. Bounce heat back. Double your warmth. That's the closest thing to a miracle tonight. Here's what you built. A microclimate. Insulation slows heat loss. Weatherproof blocks wind. The floor steals nothing. Fire radiates life. You're not fighting the cold. You're negotiating with physics. Will it be comfortable? No. Will it work? Barely. Will it keep you alive? Maybe. And maybe beats dead. You didn't need tools. You didn't need nails. You didn't need a contractor or a permit or a Pinterest board. You needed dirt, sticks, and the refusal to quit. Survival isn't comfort, it's spite. It's waking up and saying, not today. The world ended, you didn't. Now do it again.